Hi everyone, I'm here today to talk to you about whether you should or should not ferment watermelon rind. And you're probably thinking, well, why would we want to do this in the first place? Well, it occurred to me that perhaps we were losing something valuable because, we eat the center of the watermelon and then we throw it out. So what I wanted to discover is, first of all, do people eat watermelon rind? And, a quick little Google search showed that they do. So then I thought, well, let me try them. They're very bland. It doesn't taste very good. And I thought, what if I fermented them? Well, is there a benefit to fermenting them? And it turns out there is. So the fiber that's in the rind is very prebiotic, and it will help feed beneficial bacteria. So that kind of makes it a little bit of a waste if we throw it out. And I thought, well, the texture's not very good, the flavor's not very good. What if I ferment it first? Will that improve the flavor? And then can I use that to soften the texture a bit, improve the flavor, and then put it into some kind of recipe that's fairly tasty. So I'm going to show you how to ferment the watermelon rinds, and then I'll show you a little quick recipe you can use to get the benefit of the fermented watermelon rinds. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare the rind for fermentation. And this is probably the number one reason why you don't ever want to ferment watermelon rinds. So as you can see, I have a fair bit of pink here. This is partly because I don't like the taste of the watermelon. Well, I mean, I like it, but I don't like it as much as the center of the watermelon, which is a little sweeter. So I usually leave about that much. So first thing you're going to do is going to cut a piece off, and then you're going to cut that in half so that you have something that's easy to handle. And because there's some of this pink here, it makes it easier to hold on to peel off the rind. And you need a nice little sharp paring knife to get the green part off, which you want to take off. And then, okay, so that's off. And then now you can take the rest of the pink off. You don't have to take all of it off. If there's a little bit left, that's fine. It's just a little bit of flavor. And if you're wondering what you do with this, you eat it. And now you can just make the slices. So we're going to slice thinly because that way when we ferment, it's going to soften this up more, put more flavor in it, and we don't have to do anything with it after it's fermented. So you can see that we have these little pieces. They got a little bit of pink on them. That's fine. All right. So that's what we do to prepare the watermelon rind. And then we want a mason jar. We want to fill it up about 2/3 to 3/4 with rind. You can do a bigger batch, obviously. If you have a whole watermelon, you can do a lot of rind. Again, it's work, so you may not want to do that. And then we're going to do a salt brine. So we have a tablespoon of sea salt with every cup of water that we have. So there's a 1.5 cups in here. So there is a 1.5 tablespoons of sea salt. So you just mix that up. You pour this in. You make sure it covers the watermelon rind, but you leave space between the water line and the top of the jar. That's very important when you're fermenting. And then you put the lid on properly, if you can, if you have the skill set. Not sure I do. There we go. Put the lid on, okay? And now it can ferment. Now there's a trick to this, and it's very important because, as you can see, some of the watermelon rind are floating on top. When you're doing fermentation, anything that's above the water has the ability to mold because it's not in the salt brine. So every day for the first few days, you're going to turn it upside down like this and leave it for a few hours and then turn it back side up so that there's a period every day where all the rind is getting some brine on it. After about 3-4 days, you don't have to do it anymore because what's going to happen is the first bacteria to start when you ferment is called Leukenstock mesentoides. You can practice that 3 times. And it produces carbon dioxide, which creates a vacuum in here. And once there's a vacuum in this airspace, you're not going to get any mold forming of any kind. So that's all there is to fermenting. And I would recommend that you ferment it for 2 weeks. That will give it the most opportunity to build up beneficial bacteria and soften a bit for texture purposes. And that's all there is to fermenting watermelon rind. So I made this one about 2 weeks ago. So I wanted you to see them side by side so that you can see what it looks like when it's fermented. You can see that it's lost any of sort of the green shade. The water has picked up a pinky color because, again, there was some pink on the rind. And this is very similar to what happens with sauerkraut when you ferment cabbage. It goes from being green to being sort of, whatever color you want to call that, off-white. And so the same thing has happened to the rind. I just wanted to show that to you. So I'm going to make the salad, obviously, with the one that has been fermented. And the first thing I'm going to do is rinse it, because as it is right now, it's quite salty on the rind itself. But if you rinse it, it'll still be a bit salty, but not so much that you can't incorporate it into the recipe in a more balanced way. All right, now we're ready to make the salad. So what I have here is about 1.5 cups of the fermented watermelon rind, 1 cup of grated carrots, about 1/4 cup lightly roasted almonds that I chopped loosely, and then I have a bit of chopped up red onion. That's optional. If you want something with a little more zing in it, you can do that. I have 1 celery stalk sliced. I have a bit of fresh watermelon, which you can also add. And I have about 1 tablespoon to 1.5 tablespoons of chopped dill. I also have the dressing here, which is a combination of 2 tablespoons olive oil, 1 tablespoon full-fat yogurt, 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar, a bit of pepper, and a teaspoon of raw honey. Now, normally I would put salt in the dressing, but because there's salt here, I'm not going to. You can always add salt later. You can always season it more. You're probably saying, why would you be putting in fresh watermelon? I don't know. Why not? So that's your choice. You're probably also thinking, well, you ate the watermelon. That's how you ended up with the rind in order to ferment it. And that was done 2 weeks ago. So where is this watermelon coming from? Well, maybe you went and bought a new watermelon. It's your choice. It goes nicely with all the flavors. You can add it or you can leave it out. Doesn't really matter. All right, so there's nothing much to this. We just put all the ingredients into the bowl. And then we put the dressing on it. And give it a toss. And that's all there is to it. Now, good idea to let this sit for several hours in the refrigerator because you want the salt from the watermelon rind to permeate the other ingredients and sort of decrease what's in the watermelon rind. It's going to blend together better, and time will do this. This might be another reason why you never want to do this, because you can't eat the salad right away. I mean, you can, but it's not going to have its best flavor profile. And you can salt it later as well if you like, if you find it's not to your palate taste. The other thing you can also do is you don't have to go with this selection, I should say, of vegetables. You could put lettuce in here, but I would let this part sit first and add the lettuce when you're about to serve it. The same with baby spinach. Again, it needs to go in just before you serve. But you can add other things to this as you see fit. And that's basically my little recipe for watermelon rind. Again, am I going to do this again? Probably not, because it seems like a lot of work for a little bit of rind. And, but the good news is you can do it if you want. You can basically ferment anything and get more use from everything that you buy. So I hope you found this informative, and that's all I got to say.